Welcome back, South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. Ashlyn, Sullivan, Al Morganti here with you. And while hockey is starting up soon, the hockey world and really the world, very tragic with Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, what happened last week in their very sudden death. It has really rocked all of us, and we felt like it wouldn't be right to talk about hockey without talking about them and what they meant to hockey and really just the community as a whole. Al, it's been awful. And it's been a couple days removed, and it just still doesn't seem real what happened.
No, Ashlyn, I've been around Philly 40 years and, lived through the Pelly Lindbergh, and that was a case of drunk driving, and Jerome Brown, reckless driving, and, Halliday with the plane, kind of reckless on an airplane. But this was beyond tragic, to just be riding your bike and a whole family basically ruined by this. It was devastating news. I mean, and I don't think in Philadelphia, I really don't think we realize the impact that the Gaudreau family and Johnny Gaudreau in particular have had on this area. I mean, I've lived in South Jersey, and, when you watch Johnny Gaudreau play from when he was a little kid, and I was fortunate enough to coach like some teams and travel and play, have games against him, and you just watched him, and he and his family became a touchstone for everybody that went on to play, whether it was in college or wherever, in the NHL, even some of his teammates from Gloucester Catholic, in the National Hockey League, he and Matthew, and their legacy at Boston College. He really was a generational player, and the family became the nucleus for all hockey in South Jersey. It was like if you played against him, you knew somebody that was in the NHL. You know a family that sent players to Boston College to win bean pots. His dad, Guy Gaudreau, just coached so many kids since coming down here from Vermont. And when you really look at what happened, it was immensely tragic to have this removed. And you see the response, literally from Calgary to Columbus, here, Boston, for Boston College, everything that's gone on. I don't know how to even put this into words, the impact that he had. This is an area that produced Hobie Bakers buried in Laurel Cemetery in Philadelphia. And Johnny Gaudreau's had that big of an impact, and the Gaudreau family in particular. I can't imagine what the family's going through. I know that hockey is a family sport. You travel with your kids, you bring them places. And to have this happen to a player and his brother on the eve of their sister's wedding, you can't imagine what it felt like that night to get the news. And you can't imagine what the family feels like if they'll ever get over it, to get over what's happened here. And I just hope that the region realizes what an impact that whole family has made, and the hole in the heart of the entire NHL, the entire hockey world on what's gone on here with Johnny Gaudreau. And also, I think players should realize in all sports that they mean so much to people. When you see the tributes and the services being held for the two Gaudreau brothers, how much they mean to people. And I think fans should realize when you look at a player or you follow a player, and I was guilty of pumping his tires to the highest level when he came out of college, because I wanted so bad for him to play in Philadelphia, having watched him so long. But players, if you're a fan, they're much more than cartoons. And I think sometimes fans look at them as cartoons and a compilation of statistics or analytics. And they're people. And the reason they got to where they are is because they cared so much. They worked so hard. They got there. And yeah, they've got their problems, and there's things that go on that are kind of messy at times, but it's because they're not just the compilation of statistics and a cartoon character running around so you can have them on your fantasy team or bet on them on some betting site. No, they're real people who have really impacted people's lives. So if anything good can come out of it, and I can't imagine how much. It's just, I think that the players can have an appreciation for what they mean to fans, and the fans certainly have an appreciation for players as human beings and just not a pile of statistics.
Absolutely. And I think another big example, and yet again, there's so many examples of this is what Uber is for. It's another tragedy that didn't have to happen with drunk driving. There's way too much of it in the world, especially with hockey, and as a whole, we hear stories of this countless times, and it's just another example of this is why Uber exists, so we don't hear horrendous stories like this. And when I first heard about it, and you started hearing all the stories about Johnny and Matthew, and while we heard about the hockey stuff, I took away, man, I wish I just would have met him, because every teammate you hear from or every person you talk to talks about just what a good human he was. And I know you hear that all the time, but from what I've heard, and I know you know personally, no, it really was true. He was that good of a guy.
Yeah, and I think also it's the family. He and his brother, everybody that they met, everybody at college, everybody that played through whatever through a Pee-wee system or whatever system here in South Jersey that went on. And they stayed friends, come back home, come to Avalon, just whenever I talk to groups of kids about hockey, I always, I suggest, the usual stuff with skate and all this. And I said, you have a responsibility to be a good person because this sports writers and people in the media will always tell you after they cover hockey and because a lot of people don't cover the sport until they just get thrown an assignment. They go, wow, there's really nice guys there. And I think there is a responsibility that goes with that to continue that tradition, to be a good person when somebody meets you, to have time for them and to be a real person. And that's what they had. That's why I think everybody is bonded together so much on this, because it's more than just a hockey player. And it was a terrific hockey player. I mean, I got to say, if Allen Iverson had played hockey, he would have played hockey like Johnny Gaudreau. That is exactly what would have happened. Just fast and doing everything like that. However, then when he got off the ice, he's just a mean, mellow guy, really nice guy. Come back and you wouldn't even know. You just met him somewhere else, you'd never know. He was like one of the stars of the National Hockey League, and always family first. Come back and do stuff with your family and really recognize how much his dad meant to bring him up as a hockey player. So you're right. And the drunk driving aspect, I mean, look, this has gone on from generation to generation, from Pelly Lindbergh, as I said, to now. I don't know how it's cured, but I do think the penalties have to be stiffer.
Absolutely. They have to be, because it's just another terrible example. And we talk about Johnny, and what rocked me the most is when I saw his wife post with their kids, and just you think about how much her life has changed. And I just think with this whole situation, it's the perfect example of what hockey is, because I have friends that have reached out that don't know who he is, that don't watch hockey, but they want to know about him and they want to know the type of person he is. And I think Johnny was such a great example of what hockey is and what makes it so special. As you say, he's the superstar of the league, but you see him on a sidewalk and he's a normal guy and you wouldn't know. And that's so hockey. And I hope that never changes.
Yeah. And all the tributes are coming from every level. Gloucester Catholic High School, where he played. Boston College is torn apart because of it, where he played there. The tribute in Calgary, the tribute in Columbus, and now the tribute that's coming here in Philadelphia, I presume next week, when I'm sure a huge portion of the NHL will be there to kind of just remember and pay their respects. And unfortunately, there are no words to tell a family to try to say the sympathy on what you're going through. And you just have to hope that it's the memory. And I'm hoping that there's a trophy or a award or a building in memory of the Gaudreau brothers.
Yes, that is the hope. It's a terrible tragedy in the hockey world, really in the world as a whole, and another example of why drunk driving just cannot exist anymore. But we wanted to do an episode honoring Johnny and Matthew and the Gaudreau family before we get back to hockey news next week, because it just felt right. So thanks for tuning in to South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. We'll see you next week.